All right, let's go over number 2, chapter 5. See that? On screen? Okay, good. All right, so we start with reactions, right? And you've already done this, so you can just give me numbers and we can just verify and we can skip through the parts that we already know how to do. So you probably did a moment about A to get CY. What'd you get for CY? Confirm, people? Yeah? All right, so if you didn't get a number, let me know and I can work it. We can figure out why you didn't get the number, but if we got the same number, then we should have that down by now. And it goes up, right? Yeah. So if this is going to push to the right, it's going to kind of create this rotation, kind of pushing down. That's going to definitely go up. This may go up or down. That's a large load coming down, right? So that is creating down force here, but the 5K is creating up force. So I'm not completely convinced the AY goes up. What'd you find? Does go up, what'd you get? 4.5. Yeah, confirmed by people or not? It's quiet. All right, we're gonna go with that number then. If you guys muck this up on me, I'm not gonna be happy about that. And then what about AX? Yeah, by observation, it's 5K because we know the sum of the forces in the X have to be equal to 0. And these two are the only X, right? So which direction does it go? It's got to go left because the red external force is going right. So that's like chapter 4, right? 3, 2, and 1, actually, it's all of them combined. So that's the first step. Find those reactions, try to get them right, because if they're wrong, obviously you're going to work your way through the problem with bad numbers, and we don't want that. So then the theory with method of joints is you isolate joints. Pick a joint, isolate it, go from there. And you can actually pick any joint. So this is just food for thought for the future. You could not do reactions and you could pick this joint and it should solve because you have 2 unknowns. Now, it's not going to be easy because this unknown has an unknown in the X and an unknown in the Y, right? It has 2 components, and this one does too. So you're going to end up with 2 unknowns in the X and 2 unknowns in the Y, which is solvable because we have 2 equations, but that would be simultaneous equations. And that you'd have to brush off your simultaneous equation math to do that. So I don't advocate that, but just know that if you find a connection with only 2 unknowns, you can go straight to it and do it without step 1. Now, that's like forward thinking the problem and maybe a little more advanced maneuver. If you're just not sure about things, then just follow the order, right? Solve for the reactions, look for the simplest joint and go after it. So this one has 3 forces involved, 1, 2, 3. This one has 4. So this one is a little simpler. Not much, but a little. So I'm going to go joint C. Doesn't matter. You could do A, right? And you could actually do B. B is just not going to be any fun. So there's 3 forces at joint C. And you definitely want to put in the one you know, 5.4167K. And then we have BC, or CB, doesn't matter how you name it, and then AC, or CA. Then we want to think through directions, okay? So the way to do that is to look at the direction where there's only one unknown, and that'll be helpful. And that would be which way, X or Y? Definitely Y, because we know this, right? So that means BC has components in both the X and Y, And this is the only other force in the y. So these two must be opposite and equal. 5.4167 K. So then you can like, well, okay, I can work this BC vector if I can get its angle. If I know a little more information, and I should be able to get this angle from up here, right? Theta. Like we know this is 10 because they gave that 10 feet. So we can build a little triangle here and we can say, oh, this angle is then going to be the tangent of theta is going to equal what? 10 over 16, opposite over adjacent. You want to have that angle for me? 32.005 degrees. Confirmation, head nod, verbal yes. Junior, that'd be great. I know you're not awake yet, bro, but we'll get there. All right, so now we know the angle. I can pull BC out. I just recorded that, you know, for history. You can look back at that like 10 years from now. I think BC goes down. And now we know that the y component is 5.4167 K. Does everyone get that I'm just pulling that vector out and looking at the components of that vector? Yep. All right. And then we know this angle is this 32.005 degrees. So I want to know BC, but actually the X is going to be handy too, because those are the only two, right? Yeah. So AC must go to the left. BC must come down. And I know AC must be equal to that one. So solving this out solves this, essentially. As long as you see those equal and opposite forces. All right, so let's go for BC first. That's going to be opposite and hypotenuse, so that is sine. Feeling like running my calculator. That's a little bit of therapy. So that number, BC comes across and the 5.4167. I did it kind of in the wrong order, so I got to switch this and divide. Did you get 10.22? Good. And I would round that because that's going to be one of the answers. And then the last thing we need to think about when we get these things is whether it's compression or tension. Do you remember the rule for that? What is it? Yep. So if it points into the joint, compression, away from the joint, tension. So we already know that BC is in compression and AC is in tension. So BC, compression. And then if I was going to draw the truss diagram, then they're not asking you to draw the truss diagram, but essentially you just draw the truss and start putting in the loads along the members. So that one's 10.22 in compression, and that's at both ends, right? Got to be at both ends. So it would point into the joint here, and it would point into the joint here. So it does kind of flip over when you, oh, shit. I was supposed to open the door for the guys. I'm gonna pause this and apologize. All right, back at it. We have BC. Let's get this X component. So I would use what? You could use tangent. That's those two. You could use cosine. I'd probably use cosine. So cosine 32.005 is going to equal this X force, which is also going to equal AC, right? Okay, so I could actually put AC in, which I'd probably do. Adjacent AC over BC, which is now 10.22032. 10.22032. It's best to not use the rounded number there. So when you get a solution that's rounded, at least put in 4 places for the next calculation. The book's not so good about that. So your answers could be just ever slightly off of the book answers. They like round intermediately and then they round all weird like. So, all right, so what'd you get for AC? 8.67K. Yep. And then we know it's in tension. Yep. So then that would go here, 8.67 in tension. Super important we get tension and compression down because those are different stress levels. So wood has a different limit in compression stress, being compressed, than it has in tensile stress, being pulled apart. So when we do stresses next term, we're going to need to know if things are in compression or tension because we're going to compare it to different limits. So, all right, so now we know 2 of the 3. This is the only one we're left with. Again, you want to think about the simplest place to go next, and we have to go to another joint to get it. Everything up here is kind of at an angle. These 2 are unknown at an angle. That's going to be more complicated than unknown with 1 horizontal and 1 on an angle. It's always simpler if you have some horizontal members. So I would stay away from joint B. I don't need to go there. If I just go to A, solve for this, it's done with never going to B. Okay, so I'm going to go to joint A. Put in what you know. And we also know AC, because we just figured it out. We know it's in tension, so which way does it point? Points away. It's in tension, it points away. We know it's 8.67. Oh, I lost that number. Anyone have the unrounded number? 8.666. Okay, that's good enough. Morning, Junior. Awesome. All right. And then we have our unknown, right? What do you think it does? Does it go up? Does it go down? Down? Okay, how come? Yeah, gotta go down. And it is AB. Gotta come down because this is going up. And then what do we know about the components of AB? .5833K. The Y is equal to the other Y force. There's only 2 of them. Even though there's 4 forces going on, there's only 2 in the Y. So that solves this one out because we can figure out this angle, gamma, right? It's going to be inverse tangent 8 over 10. Sorry, 10 over 8. Looks like 5134. 3402 degrees, right in there. Yeah. Then we can just go straight for AB. Absolutely. Yeah, and then you could put that agreement theorem in. Yep, for sure. Let's do that. Let's do it that way. So what is that? 3.666? To the right, yeah. Oh, it's got to be left to oppose it, right? Correct. 3.666K is this one right there. By summing the forces in the X. I mean, that's the equation that would give it to you, right? So then you can just put that agreement out. What'd you get for AB? Compression or tension? Compression. Pointing into the point. Yeah. Up to the truss, 5.87K compression. So force pushing down, force pushing to the right, produce compression on both top members and tension on the bottom member. So it's, especially when these get more complicated, it's not intuitive. Like I can't guess sometimes which it's going to be just working through a truss. So you really have to start to rely on your numbers. All right, nice job. Any questions on that? Stop this here recording.